here we are, and we're continuing on. And I hope that the previous videos from the last series, you can still uh, get some benefit out of them. Even though we're no longer writing to the old theme of our voice, our place. And I want to say also shout out to Abraham for giving us the title for the last issue, Reclaiming the Space. So thank you, Abraham. And also thank you for the theme suggestion for this time around, which is I kind of modified it a little bit to what Abraham had originally suggested, but it is creating the people. So for the next 12 weeks, we'll actually be talking about one specific thing that I think is very important for us to know in terms of, how to write and tell stories and whatnot. But I think that, we'll explore definitely what the idea is of creation and creating characters and people in our stories. Which is totally something that's possible to do through poetry and everything. So I do hope that the next 12 weeks are fruitful for everybody. And I also want to say before I get fully started that, the next 12 weeks, I literally mean the next 12 weeks, in that even the days before the holidays, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, the Tuesday before Christmas, and the Tuesday before New Year's Day, I am expecting to still have a session for us and a lesson and everything. And just like our past sessions, every couple of sessions will be, I think it's the third and the sixth session, as well as the ninth session will be workshop days where you guys can get feedback from me and the rest of the group, share your work, share your projects that you've been doing up to that point, and get feedback. So yeah, hopefully that'll get us sort of set up for what we're going to be up to for the next several weeks. Also, I see we have a couple of new people joining us, joining the Conchas y Café group for the very first time. Thank you, and welcome to our little Conchas y Café family. This community of writers is always producing, and I do look forward to giving you all feedback on your writing over the next 12 weeks as we talk about characterization. If at any time you have any questions or anything like that, just kind of like wave me down or, stop me. You can unmute yourself and also, just blurt out your question or your comment. Everybody's voice is valuable, and I think all of your insights really do help us as we discover different techniques in writing. So, yeah. To begin with, just like we do every single time, I'd like to share with you all our quote of the week. And this time around, our quote of the week, we actually have two, but we're going to start off first with this quote that I have here up on our screen. Hopefully you're able to see it. It comes from Viktor Frankl, who is an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist, also a Holocaust survivor and founder of logotherapy, literally healing through meaning, a meaning-centered school of psychotherapy. Y aquí les traducí también la cita de esta semana, que viene de Viktor Frankl. La traducción lo hice más o menos como él lo escribió me imagino, austriaco, pero dice: el hombre es originalmente caracterizado por su búsqueda por su significado, en vez de su búsqueda por él mismo. Entre más se olvida de él mismo, dándose a una causa o a otra persona, más humano es. Y entre más se inmersa y absorta en algo o alguien aparte de él mismo, más se va haciendo él mismo. So in Spanish, I feel like the translation is a little jumbled. It's kind of difficult to translate what he's saying. But in English, he wrote for us, man is originally characterized by his, quote, search for meaning rather than his search for himself. The more he forgets himself, giving himself to a cause or another person, the more human he is. And the more he is immersed and absorbed in something or someone other than himself, the more he really becomes himself. So what do y'all think? What does that say to you? And I'll actually copy it and paste it in the chat so you guys can see it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Because I'm using my phone. When I read the poem, I also read the fact that he was a Holocaust survivor, which I thought was kind of interesting. Because I think it's like this kind of like, he talked about like this larger community, maybe, like forming part of a collective, and how we all kind of participate in one form or another in these communities, whether we're born into them, whether we later in life join. But I think it kind of we grow through them. I don't know. Something like that.
I think I kind of get what you're saying, Jorge, in that, you know, when we give ourselves to a cause or to other people, we can kind of go through this form of self-discovery, right? Was that more or less what you're getting out of it?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So, Juanita?
Well, reading that quote, since we are talking about characterization, it basically, for me, it's like the more we forget of ourselves and immerse ourselves in the things that we actually do, that forms our character. You know, we're characterized by what we do. Not, you know, because I could just sit here and nobody's going to guess what kind of a person I am or what character or how to describe me if I'm not doing anything. You understand? Or if I'm not saying anything. So it's more like when you're involved in the things that you do, in the causes that you support. That there's a lot about me than just sitting there. You understand? So we're characterized by the things that we involve ourselves in, you know, and thus, you know, forgetting our own self, you know, because if I just think about myself, there's no way that I'm going to communicate. All I'm going to communicate to the outer world is I'm very selfish because I'm just thinking about myself. That would be maybe the way people would describe me if I don't do anything for anyone. So I think that the more we involve ourselves with the things that we do, that speaks a lot more than that. That's what I'm gathering from that quote.
Yeah. I see some heads nodding there. Anyone else want to expand on that? Ms. Luz? Sorry, you're on mute. Ms. Luz.
When I read this, it made me think about how it applies to myself, how I guess the meaning that, for example, that nursing gave me as a profession, I felt like it defined me. It was a hat I put on and never really took off. You can't ever, once a nurse, it's like always a nurse. It becomes a part of you. So it was interesting to me that role is of, you know, doing it and learning it, and it became a part of me that just defined me and gave me so much meaning or purpose in life. And then when I removed it and retired, I felt, you know, like, yeah, I don't have any purpose. I don't have any meaning anymore. Well, other things obviously stepped in and still about caring, but also about my spiritual journey. I decided, okay, now I want to define, you know, my spiritual side. So then I put that hat on, but I found they also still coincide because it's still about being compassionate and being caring and being and like what she was saying about, you know, what you do defines you. Also in writing, like I've discovered just that the more I've written and the more that creativity comes up, and that I've learned to develop it, and I've discovered more about myself, or it has also defined me. And I didn't really expect that to happen at all, because writing for me was just more of I thought of an intellectual process, not necessarily actually. I'm learning about what I represent just by writing it, by speaking it. So yeah, this Viktor Frankl, I've heard of his logotherapy in the past, and but this particular quote really made me understand, you know, what he's trying to get across.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that you know, as you were sharing how, you know, nursing sort of became like your identity, it made me think about how being the founder and executive director of DSTL Arts and the voice and the face of DSTL Arts, you know, it sort of blurs that line of, you know, who I am as an individual. And, you know, all of you know me as the guy that teaches the workshops, right? But you know me also, I think, in other ways as a poet and as a tequila fanatic, and, you know, and all of these other things that not everybody, I think, gets to know. But then there's also sort of that blurring of, you know, what DSTL Arts is and who Luis is. And, you know, I think that it's important at least to have a separation of the two. But for all of you to feel welcome and everything, it is, I think, also important that DSTL Arts has a face and a personality. And if it's my face and personality, you know, there's not a whole lot that I can do about that at this point. But, you know, it's yeah, I think that I say all of that to say that, yeah, there is, I think, something to the idea that Viktor Frankl is saying, and that the more we are immersed and absorbed by a cause or by, you know, our feelings for another person or something like that, the more we end up discovering who we are as individuals. And if I didn't, you know, represent DSTL Arts, I probably would not really know certain things about myself related to, you know, my drive, you know, my strengths, and the things that have, I think, helped me grow our organization. And I say ours because this is as much your nonprofit as it is mine. You know, this is our community and our collective voice that is coming together to do something larger than me. Yeah, I think that we're all kind of picking up on what Viktor Frankl is dropping on us. So that said, unless if anybody has any other comments or questions about the quote, I'm going to share with you our second quote of the week. So this week being our very first week, this is not exactly how we usually run the workshops for those of you that are new or returning, but our weekly lessons usually start off with one quote that we try to dissect, but this time around I've got two. And the second one comes from Albert Camus, who was born the 7th of November in 1913 and passed away January 4th in 1960. Para los que no conocen a Albert Camus, fue filósofo, autor y periodista francés, y él escribió: "El hombre es la única criatura que se rehúsa a ser lo que es." Man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. And I kind of like that quote in contrast to the Viktor Frankl quote. What do you think Albert Camus is saying by saying that man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is.
Well, it kind of goes, like you're saying, the other way around, because the other one's what the media or the environment you're in makes you, and this one is, even if they tell you are I don't know, a failure, you choose to be something else, or you choose to rise above, or the other way around. But you choose, because you are not subject to what people are telling you you should be.
I think you broke up there towards the end, Abraham. Not sure what that last little bit was that you were saying. Ani, do you have a comment?
I actually think they're saying the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
Camus' quote seems to be saying that we are the only creature that is so self-conscious that we can place a meaning or an image on ourselves, whereas other creatures just be. Whatever it is that they are, they're just being it. They're not trying to make it into something else or make it mean something else. And what Frankel is saying is that it's only when we are so immersed in a cause that we can completely give ourselves over to, that we become less conscious of that meaning that we place on things, so that we can actually become who we naturally are without any without any manufactured image or meaning that we place on it out of our own self-awareness or self-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
To me, they're one's an extension of the other. They're both saying pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I think that they do stand in contrast while, basically saying the same or similar things, and that, I think there is something about, denying who we are, and up to the point where we're finally doing what we're meant to be doing, and then we realize halfway through it, this is actually who I am, right? Let me pose this question to all of you. How many of you still don't see yourselves as poets, even though you're writing, even though you're producing poetry, and doing all sorts of different activities that reinforce the fact that you are a poet? How many of you still sometimes have that feeling of like, oh, I'm not really a poet? I see one hand. Abraham, kind of, San Juanita. Paola, I see you in the chat. Yeah. Jorge, Ms. Luz. Believe it or not, I have those moments too. I do. I for those of you that don't know, I have my master's degree in creative writing, and I've published books, and I've had awards given to me for my poetry. But I really sometimes have that sort of imposter syndrome where I think, you know what, I'm not really that great of a poet, and that's okay. That's really okay, because the fact is that you're still here, right? You're still taking this workshop. You're still producing. Almost all of you that are a part of this current class right now have already published something with DSTL Arts through our Conchas y Café zine, or done more beyond just the Conchas y Café zine. Some of you have actually published your very first poetry chapbooks. And, we're selling them. All of the work that's in the Conchas y Café zines are being sold. Some of them have sold out and are now out of print. So guess what? You're poets. Whether you feel it or not, you are actually poets. And I think that from what I've heard from some of you, the fact that you're giving yourself this space and this time, you are actually recognizing that you are poets. So you're not actually technically refusing to be what you are. So I congratulate you on that. Yeah, a little round of applause from Abraham there for does anybody have any other comments or questions about either one of our quotes here before we move on?
Yo, acerca de Camus,
Ajá.
creo que cuando leí el libro de El extranjero, que fue la traducción en español, me gustó mucho porque hablaba sobre el absurdismo, que era como el vacío inevitable que hay en la vida. Entonces Camus siempre fue como que tuvo esa corriente de nada existe, o sea, como que la vida no tenía ningún sentido, entonces fue algo que me gustó mucho, era como esa contradicción entre ser hombre y seguir tus deseos y las morales que te ponen, pero al mismo tiempo, ¿cuál es el punto de hacer todo eso? Entonces creo que esa quote resuena mucho de que el hombre es lo que no, ¿cómo era? Se me olvidó, de que es el único ser humano que no quiere hacer eso, entonces es como, siento que viene como de todo ese libro y de esa como, no sé, como pelea en tu mente de o seguir los principios o realmente hacer lo que tú quieres, pero que al final es un hoyo negro inevitable donde todos caen.
Eso sí, es un hoyo inevitable que a veces nos consume. Pero al fin yo creo que es importante entender que no tiene nada de sentido eso, ¿verdad? No tiene punto, porque al último cada quien va a hacer lo que le dé la gana. You know, we might feel sometimes inhibited or held back by what society says is right and proper, but ultimately you're going to find a way to do what you enjoy. You know, not all of you have been career-long poets, you know, but guess what? You're still here. You're still doing it, you know. You probably are sneaking it in during a lunch break or, you know, every night before you go to bed and you're journaling. Like, you're still being poets and you're poeting. And so, art for life, como dice Abraham in the chat there. You know, es inevitable. Uno va a ser lo que uno es. So I think it's good to remember that, right? So let me ask you this now. How do you take that awareness of who you are and what you do and translate that into characters, into other people that are maybe standing in for you as a poet, as a writer, as an artist? I mean, ultimately, that is what characterization is, right? It's when you're developing a stand-in for you, or for some idea, or whatever the case might be. To give us the formal definition, though, of what characterization is, I do have it on our handout here. So aquí tienen lo que significa precisamente caracterización. Tiene dos definiciones. La primera es la creación o construcción de un personaje ficticio. La segunda definición es una descripción de la naturaleza distinta o las características de alguien o algo. In English for us, the definition of characterization, the formal definition, is the creation or construction of a fictional character. And I kind of like the second one a little bit more. The second definition is a description of the distinctive nature or features of someone or something. So, what does that mean for you, the nature of something? ¿Qué significa la naturaleza de un ser? Abraham?
I think I spoke with, I think it was Olivia, when we're trying to write stories, one of the first Conchas, I guess, or close by the second, third edition. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about how we don't like to write about ourselves, but it's inevitable to write what we know. And sometimes, for example, I end up translating not a lot of my characters, but I put some of my own motivations into them. So that way, it's kind of me, but in a different character, with a different story, with a different name. But it has a basis on me. So that can be what you just described.
Yeah, I think that Abraham has a good point, right? We write what we know. Sometimes that means we write the kind of character that we might be in a particular story or even in a poem, right? Anybody else have any thoughts? What does it mean to describe the nature of something or someone? Nadie? Okay. Well, if nobody has any other ideas or questions, let's just move into the poem then for this week. Because this poem that I selected, I think can kind of help us sort of begin to see how we might, look at the way that one person is and then maybe try to use parts of ourselves in describing that person or vice versa. Y para ser más preciso, este poema no es el poema completo. Es un extracto del poema que se llama Sin Título, que viene de Tatiana Lubovitsky Acosta. So if you want to read the entire poem, as opposed to this excerpt that I selected for this week, you can actually find it on the Poem a Day newsletter from poets.org. That's where I've been getting a lot of our poetry lately. But yeah, this is a much longer poem. So this is only an excerpt. And like I said, it comes from Tatiana Lubovitsky Acosta, who is the author of The Easy Body, published by Timeless Infinite Light in 2017. Tatiana Lubovitsky Acosta works as a barista and full spectrum birth worker and lives in San Francisco, California. ¿Hay alguien quien gusta leer el poema para nosotros? Any volunteers that want to take on the reading of our poem this week? Feel free to just jump in. Anybody?
I'll read it.
Right.
Okay. Untitled. Once, while on a coke binge and away from my mother, my father drove his car across the sand and into the Pacific Ocean. Before he had done that, he had given away all of his possessions and eaten a steak dinner. He survived, and then he was able to torture us with his aristocratic aesthetic drama for years to come. You can take a Pisces to water, and all it will do is challenge them to cry more than the sky. I say this with admiration. How would it serve me to make this up? Like all good, poor people and aristocrats, I know how to have a good time. Why I refuse to is my own problem. Like all good leftists of a certain region, I have never read Marx or the Bible. I know the gossip well enough to kneel and resist. For example, or perhaps for instance, I was content enough to be a corpse eater among the lotus eaters, and then a lotus eater among the petroluses. And now I'm a I don't know how to pronounce that word. I'm a petrolus among the corpse eaters. Petrolus, a woman or girl who uses petrol to set fire to a building or other property. Specifically, any of the women who set fire to public buildings in Paris during the Commune in May 1871.
Excellent. Thank you, Caro. And yes, you pronounced it correctly, petrolus. And it was a new word for me, so that's why I added the definition down there at the bottom for everyone. Because I think that it helps to know exactly what the word means. Tengo un voluntario que gusta leernos el poema en español, la traducción.
Yo lo puedo leer.
Perfecto, gracias, Paula.
Una vez, durante un atracón de cocaína y apartado de mi madre, mi padre manejó su carro cruzando la arena para meterse al Océano Pacífico. Antes de hacer eso, había regalado todas sus pertenencias, y comió una cena de bistec. Sobrevivió. Y luego, él pudo torturarnos con su drama aristocrático ascético durante años. Se puede llevar una Piscis hasta el agua, y lo único que hará eso es retarlos a llorar más que el cielo. Lo digo con admiración. ¿De qué me sirve inventar esto? Como toda buena gente pobre y aristócrata, yo sé cómo pasarme un buen rato. Él porque rehusó tenerlo es mi propio problema. Como todo buen izquierdista de cierta región, jamás he leído a Marx o la Biblia. Yo conozco el chisme lo suficiente para ponerme de rodilla y resistir. Por ejemplo, o quizá, por instancia, estaba suficientemente contenta con ser un come cadáveres, entre un comeloto, y luego un comelotro entre las petruleses, y ahora soy un petroluese entre los come cadáveres.
Muchas gracias, Paula. Y en español se pronuncia petroleus como se pronuncia en francés. Es una palabra francesa y significa una mujer o una joven que usa gasolina para poner en fuego a un edificio u otra propiedad, específicamente cualquiera de las mujeres que encendieron edificios públicos en París durante la Comuna en el mayo de 1871. So, what do y'all think of this poem? Untitled by Tatiana Lubovisky Acosta. What are your thoughts immediately from hearing or reading the poem? What came to mind? Anybody catch the reference to kneeling in resistance? San Juanita?
Let me just, not the second question you're asking, but the previous one.
Yeah.
What I got from this poem, well, at the beginning, I thought, and of course, I'm looking for characterization, right? So I thought at the beginning, and I was expecting to see her, or to see the author, the writer, describe the father. But then it turns out that the way she writes about the father, she's actually writing about herself. So she's characterizing herself rather than characterizing her father. That's what I gathered. So I expected, I'm like, oh, okay. So I was thinking, I wonder how the father was, you know? But then the way she starts writing and everything turns to her. You know, I was trying to figure out more about her based on what she was saying. So that's where I was a little bit like, oh, okay, it's not about the father. It's about the writer, you know? Because everything she says everything about her.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
I think that you're definitely touching on something that I think Viktor Frankl was sort of touching on, right? The more we get sort of like involved or the more we reflect on another person, the more we end up actually seeing who we are. The poem does start off with a story about her father, right? And like I said, the poem isn't complete. So, you know, you can read the whole poem on poets.org. But that said, that very first stanza that we reviewed, she's totally talking about her dad, right? And what do we learn about her dad just by focusing on that first stanza? And let me project it again so that way you all can see it. What do we know about the speaker of the poem? What do we know about the speaker's father? Because we can't always assume that this is actually Tatiana's father. So what do we know about this father character? We know that they were a coke addict, right? We know that this father figure was not with the mother when they attempted to commit suicide by driving into the Pacific Ocean. We know that they had planned it, right, by giving away their possessions, by eating a steak dinner, And we know that they survived. So they're survivor. We also know that they had some sort of worldview, this aristocratic, ascetic drama worldview. What does that mean? Aristocratic, ascetic drama. How do you all interpret that particular line? ¿Qué significa ser o tener o vivir un drama aristocrático ascético? What does that make you all think when you read that line? Any hands? Any takers? Annie?
Aristocratic implies, a higher place in the hierarchy of social classes. So it makes me feel like he's looking down on the world and in his views, like just he knows better, and he's above it all, and looking down. And ascetic implies, a negative kind of. I can't find the word, but like when you're burning up with, you're upset about something, it's just burning up inside of you, and that it's spewing out, with.
Yeah.
That's all I know. I'm gonna shut up now.
No, but that's a really good observation. I think that there is kind of like a judgment that's being placed on the father, isn't there? By using that phrase. Caro, I saw your hand go up a moment ago. What did you have to say?
Yeah, I was gonna echo a little bit of what Annie.
Annie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just said. But yeah, the aristocratic makes me think of something about like arrogance. And so yeah, that's kind of what made me think that this like person was sort of like maybe like what's that word, self-involved. Yeah.
What do you all think about the concept that the children or the others of the family are tortured by the father? I see Ani wrote, the speaker is accusing the father of being judgmental while judging him. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What does that say about the speaker of the poem? Accusing the father of being judgmental while at the same time accusing a teenager. Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of a certain level of immaturity. Sure, we could recognize that. What else can we get from the poem about who the father character is? What else do we know about the father through this characterization?
Well, I think that like I think you mentioned that he was addicted to cocaine, so there's probably like he's trying to he's running away from something. I mean, that's usually when people are like addicted to things or want to commit suicide. It is usually because they're trying to run away from something, and so yeah, there's some sort of, I feel like he's probably someone who's been traumatized, and in turn is probably traumatizing his children.
Right. Ani?
The speaker seems to be describing somebody who's who tried to commit suicide and survived, but is still very, very unhappy, and seems to be because of the description, aristocratic ascetic drama. So whatever is going on over there is a drama. It's not even like it's not really based on anything except their own views. They seem to be responsible for their own misery. And then, it's kind of accentuated in the next stanza when the speaker starts talking about, I'm I know how to have fun. The fact that I don't, it's my own fault.
Mhm.
You know, that they're in the way of their own happiness, or they're just in their own way.
Mhm. Does anybody else get the sense of the speaker trying to basically say that they're going through what some people might call first world problems? You know, like they have the privilege and they maybe recognize that they have a privilege to be able to have this sort of existential crisis? I kind of get that. And the reason why I get that, and let me project the screen here, is because of something that our speaker says when they start talking about themselves, right? So empezamos con el padre y sabemos que el padre fue o quizá todavía es un adicto a cocaína, que se quiso suicidar pero sobrevivió, y que el padre tiene sus ideas de su sufrimiento, diremos. Pero cuando empezamos a hablar del personaje principal del poema, el personaje principal dice que, como toda buena gente pobre y aristócrata, yo sé cómo pasarme un buen rato. El por qué rehúso tenerlo es mi propio problema. I think that the fact that our speaker identifies as not just a poor person, but also an aristocrat, you know, and acknowledging that they refuse to have a good time, that to me starts to sort of say, hey, you know, like I'm maybe a little bit like my dad in that I don't think I'm happy, right? And then you also go on to see this, right? Like all good leftists of a certain region, I have never read Marx or the Bible. I know the gossip well enough to kneel and resist. To me, the fact that she refers to Karl Marx's writings and the Bible as gossip, and that they know the gossip well enough to kneel and resist, that to me says something about the character of this person. Sabiendo eso, ¿cómo o qué piensan de este personaje principal? What does that say to you about the speaker of the poem? San Juanita?
I see the way she had to mention Marx, and then she had to mention the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she's, you know, looking at both sides and has heard about whatever is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the ideas, I guess, the basic ideas. And I don't know. I know people that they're not practicing any. I hate to sound or say religion, but really they're not practicing religion or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they Diosito, or Santo Dios, or like that. So it sounds to me like she's more like that, especially because she mentions, I haven't read Marx.
Mm-hmm.
And so she knows, she still has an idea of the ideas, the ideas in the Bible and the ideas in Marx. Like, this is what I know and this is what I know, but I don't read them.
Yeah.
But I know enough, to say, ay Diosito, things like that, Some people use those words. They use them, and sometimes I don't even know why they're using them.
Yeah, I like how you put it, that they have an idea of the idea.
Of the idea in the Bible, and the ideas in the ideas, that Marxist ideas.
Yeah, they have an idea of the idea, of the concept. I really like how you put that. Caro, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, it feels like the speaker is kind of making fun of themselves. I know what I got. Like, they're kind of poking, like they're sort of, they realize like they have these they're like critiquing themselves a little bit, but they're doing it sort of, in like a jovial, kind of funny way.
Kind of in a snarky way, right? Like, they don't take themselves too serious, although they recognize that there is a problem. with them not being entirely invested in anything, maybe. Abraham, like yoga. Yeah, I think that, that's like people that practice yoga without recognizing the spiritual side of it, or its spiritual origins. I think, there's something kind of missing there. Although I do have to say, yoga is a very good, and yeah, of course you will laugh, knowing that I was doing yoga a lot in the past. But like kind of like what San Juanita was saying, right? Having an idea of the idea, it means ultimately that you're not fully informed. You don't really know what you're doing. You just sort of do it because it's what everyone else is doing, right? Kind of being a follower, in a way. But our speaker does do something interesting, right? If we continue on in the poem, our speaker starts to I think tell us a little bit more about themselves, on things that they see in themselves. We finish off with, for example, or perhaps for instance. And that's kind of an interesting choice of words there. I was content enough to be a corpse eater among the lotus eaters, and then a lotus eater among the petroluses. And now I'm a petrolus among the corpse eaters. ¿Por qué creen que usa esa frase, por instancia? What is the significance of saying, for instance, after saying, for example? What is maybe the connotation of saying, for instance? I can tell you what I kind of get out of that. An instance is just one small moment, right? It's not saying necessarily that they really believe themselves to be informed enough to have been a petrolus before. Right? At one point, at one time, they considered themselves a corpse eater. So they thought they were one thing. But then someone sort of turned them over to the idea of being a petrolus. What is the petrolus? That's why I thought it was really important for us to know the definition of the word. I'm going to display that to you all one more time. La definición de petrolus es muy significativo, especialmente para este poema. Lo que significa petrolus es una mujer o una joven que usa gasolina para poner en fuego a un edificio u otra propiedad. Específicamente, cualquiera de las mujeres que encendieron edificios públicos en París durante la Comuna en el mayo de 1871. I have to apologize because I didn't actually look up what the commune was. But looking at the date, May 1871, I believe that's around the time of, I want to say it's around the time period of the French Revolution. Because if I remember my world history correctly, it was in the mid 1800s when France had their major revolt that led to them overthrowing the kings of France, King Louis, and I believe Napoleon at that time as well. Napoleon the second or third, Napoleon the third, I believe. So, there's kind of like a recognition of, now I see myself as a female warrior towards the very end there, among the corpse eaters. So yeah, burn down the system, as Abraham says. She sees herself now as a person that burns down the system. A rebel, revolutionary.
Talks about the corpse eater, so I figure it's more like the dad side of her, when she was on that side, and then the lotus eater, meaning the enlightened or whatever the hip thing was at the time, I guess. And then she becomes like, okay, fuck it, let's screw the system up and try something new, I guess.
Yeah. if we want to, maybe dissect that a little bit more, if the corpse eater is maybe referencing the concept of the dad as a survivor of death, right? Her dad being maybe a symbol for the corpse, or any other like male figure. They saw themselves as like some kind of a feminist, right? That was like a man hater. And if the lotus eater is maybe a reference to what Abraham is saying, this concept of a person that is more spiritual, and trying to find another balance on the other extreme, that could maybe be contradictory. But a petrolus being a person, and thank you, Ani, for putting in the chat there, petroluses were lower class women. So, it is, I think, a very significant thing to understand that, there's this identification with being poor and being, like a rebel rouser or a revolutionary. And now considering herself a revolutionary among, basically people that don't really want to go for the hard things. In dismantling the system, there's something there, right? That we're at least picking up, in that they now see themselves as maybe moving beyond whatever their dad might represent. Caro, you were thinking corpse eater equals a zombie. I mean, if you think of a zombie as being a person that comes back from the dead, right? Again, her dad being a survivor of death, her dad would have been a zombie, perhaps. So, carnivores versus vegetarians. Yeah, it could be that too. Yeah. So, looking at the poem and thinking about characterization, how much do we know about the two characters that we find in this poem? Do we get the sense that these two characters are fully formed people? No? Yeah, I see a lot of shaking heads. Why do you feel that we don't get a sense of two fully formed people? San Juanita?
I think that there's more. I think that at the beginning, when she started talking about her father, I think it forms her character more than her dad's. It sounds to me from what she mentions, they were aristocrats, or I guess high class. It says that she went through the typical, and I don't know if this happens, but that when you have everything in life, you lose yourself. So she was trying to find purpose. This is what I'm gathering. This is what I'm thinking. So I think everything is more about how talking more about her character, and even her thoughts, even the way she's thinking because of her judgments, and the way she saw her father, that he tortured them, maybe he was just, because sometimes our children think we complain too much. I don't know why they say that, but you understand what I'm saying? So she, saying that, it's talked more about her character than it did about her father. And then everything that she does all the way to the end, where she says that she became that kind of woman. And it's like the quote that we saw at the beginning. She gave herself too much into whatever was going on. She became a rebel, and that's where we find out what kind of a character she was. You know what I'm saying? That's how I see it. I see that everything that the way she started, and all the way to, her thoughts about what she did, and how she thought about Marxism and what she thought about the Bible. All of that says more about her than anything. And it will be interesting to see the whole poem, because I may be getting a wrong idea about this poor woman. I may be, I don't know.
Well, I think that I do recommend that you all read the entire poem because it will give you, I think, even more perspective on the speaker of the poem. Um, for the sake of time, I did cut out one, like, I don't want to say half, but maybe like a third of the poem. But I do think that if you were to read the whole poem, you would get a pretty good sense of their train of thought in talking about, they know how to have a good time, but they don't, and that's their own problem. And you also get a good sense of I believe, the relationship that was created between the dad and how that affected the speaker of the poem for the rest of their life, and wanting to push people away. So I do like what Ani put in the chat there in talking about the lotus eater sounding like a person that looks inward and maybe is introspective. And then, the idea of becoming a petrolus is being much more aware about why they do things and being proactive in their life. And so I feel like the only way we can really get to know who the speaker is by understanding their relationship with their father. And I think that that's where our very first quote of the day does kind of tie in, right? No nos conocemos sin darnos a una causa o a otra persona. Right? Dedicating a stanza, a very prominent one, the very first stanza in the poem, to someone else helps the speaker understand who they actually are at the very end. Right? Ultimately, our past and our past relationships will help us determine who we are if we take the time to sort of see the patterns and to see the way that those relationships affected us. And so for this particular week, the way that I would like us to start off with our assignments is, and thank you, Caro, for attaching the link there for the whole poem. But take this poem and think about, what are the relationships that you have had, and start off with that one relationship with someone that has led you to feel like you now understand who you are. I didn't add this on the handout like I've been doing, but I'm gonna repeat that again. Write a poem that examines a relationship that you have had that you feel now informs who you are. And let's see how much you can tell me about that other person while also recognizing that you're ultimately telling me about you. I'm sorry, Samanita, you're on mute. What was that?
I was like, can you say it again, just or maybe write it? I'll take it down.
Yeah.
Relationship you have had.
Yeah, examine a relationship that you have had and how that informs who you now are. Tomen el tiempo para reflexionar sobre una relación que han tenido en el pasado y cómo eso ha influido la persona que ahora se ve. So, any questions or final comments?
I kind of wanted to say that I really like the part where it says, where is it? Hold on, I had it. Oh yeah, you can take a Pisces to water and all it will do is challenge them to cry more than the sky. Kind of like that, kind of telling you you should be happy in the circumstances that should lead you to be somebody, but it's still, if you're not that person, you're still gonna challenge it.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think the Pisces is in this poem?
It could be her and him, because the dad is also wasn't happy. even though he was an aristocrat.
Mhm.
So both sides were unhappy where they were.
Miss Luz?
I assumed it was the dad because he tried to kill himself in the water, and he wasn't able to do that. So he was later bragging about how he was led to the water, and now all he does is brag about it. So, so that he survived it.
Yeah.
He's angry with him.
I can see that. Paola?
I see more as that cliche thing when people are like, oh, you are a Libra, that's why you are this and that, or you are a Virgo, and that's why you do this and that. Kind of like try to justify their actions and their behavior according to like those type of things.
Mhm.
So in this case, I see it more in like a sarcastic way somehow. Like she's talking about like, oh, it's a Pisces, and that's why. I mean, I don't know for me, because that's how I see those type of things. Like just try to justify like some sort of behavior, or like
I don't know if any of you have ever noticed this, but we all talk in infinites, right? In definitives, perdón. We all make those generalizations. Doesn't matter who you are, how open-minded you are. Ultimately, we all speak in generalizations and in definitives. So, lead a Pisces to water. That's what they're going to do, according to our speaker. Me, I'm a Scorpio. All Scorpios are a particular way, supposedly. But, it's not always necessarily true, right? But I think that as you write about your relationships, with others, you'll probably find yourselves speaking in definitives, right? If I were to talk about my mom, my mom is very religious. She's a born-again Christian, and being a born-again Christian, I can say that she sort of fits the stereotype of what you might imagine a born-again Christian to be like. Ultra-conservative and kind of closed-minded. And it sucks for me to say that about my mom, but that's how I feel about my mom. And if I were to write this poem, I would probably have to say that, my mom's way of being has definitely impacted who I am now. But, that's something for me to explore in a poem. So, times two. Carlos. Okay, Carlos. At least somebody can relate. I know there's a few others out there that probably could relate with that, but it's not always a bad thing, right? Sometimes people can influence us in a good way too. So this poem doesn't necessarily have to be a negative poem. Yes, our speaker of this poem, is talking about their relationship with their dad in a negative way, but people can have positive impacts on you too. So if you feel like you can write about a person that's had a positive impact on you and helped you become the person that you are, that's also a very valuable thing to write and a very valuable thing to say. So you can take this assignment however it works for you. And for those of you that are new and returning, just remember that if you have any questions about how to approach the poem, or if you want feedback, our Google Classroom, the stream is yours to use to communicate with everyone. You can use it to ask any questions of me. You can ask questions of anybody else in the class. Use it as a resource for you. And of course, if you want to message me in private, you can do so as well through Google Classroom. And I'll be posting up a homework assignment, quote unquote homework, on Google Classroom, where you can upload your poem that you generate this week. So, yes, Ani?
This is my first experience with Google Classrooms, and I noticed when I went back that onto that page that you had posted something and I didn't necessarily get an email. So are we getting notifications when someone posts or when you post on that, or we just need to on our own come and check periodically to see?
I recommend you check on your own, but if you do want to get the notifications, I think that's something that you can set up in your settings for Google Classroom so that you can get the email notification.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? ¿Algún otro comentario antes de que nos despidamos para la noche? No, we're good. All right. Well, like I said, if you do have any other questions or comments that you didn't get to share tonight, you can always use Google Classroom. At some point tomorrow, I'll upload this video to YouTube so you can rewatch it if you want to. Along with the handout, it will also be linked in the Google Classroom, so you can watch it through Google Classroom and all of that. So, yeah, yes, Ms. Luz.
I was wondering, is it possible to watch the reading that I missed? Did you record it?
Yeah, I recorded it. It should be up on YouTube now.
Oh, on YouTube. Oh, okay.
Yeah. If I remember right, I did upload it. Pretty sure I uploaded it. But yeah, it's up on YouTube. You'll also find on the DSTL Arts YouTube channel a video that is actually a couple of hours now up on the channel. And it is in celebration of the installation of artwork on 2 bus shelters, this time in South Central. So those of you that were part of the Boyle Heights installation, from the No Fake News workshops, I believe those are still up, but now we got some more artwork from more talented artists up in South Central with comics that are about mental health. And if you want to learn a little bit more about that, on this Thursday at 5:30 p.m., we'll actually be having an event, like a little release party for the Comics que Curan Volume 2 anthology that collects all of the mental health comics that were created over the summer, along with Abraham and Javier, who helped teach the classes. So, you're all invited to attend the virtual release party on Thursday. And also, if you want to attend, I just ask that you register through Eventbrite, which I've been posting on our Facebook page and Instagram and Twitter. So you can find those links there. And I might share it one more time in the Google Classroom. So. Also, for those of you that were part of the Conchas y Café sessions last time, just a little reminder that I'm going to be archiving that series on Google Classroom at the end of the week. So if you wanted to download any of the handouts from last time, you should do so now before I archive the class. So. With that said, espero que pasen un buen resto de su semana. Next Tuesday, we'll be here, same time, same place. And again, any questions, feel free to reach out. So I hope you all have a good night and see y'all soon. Bye, everyone.